Okay, today's session we're gonna go straight into the Mishna Berura on Siman Reish Sadi Beis as to the halachas about mincha on Shabbos. The Mishna Berura comments on the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch says that mincha and mincha. Then there are we say Ashrei and Ovalat Sion. So the Mishnah Berurah comments why. Why exactly are we saying Ashrei and Ovalat Sion? Well, Mishnah Berurah says, "Umafsikin b'kadosh koidim v'anis filasi." We interrupt with kaddish before we say v'anis filasi, before we remove the Sefer Torah from the Aron Kodesh. V'amniras uvalat Sion v'mincha hu b'makom seder kedusha b'chol. U'b'shah b'shemarichin harbe b'shachas hamusav henichuha ad mincha. That we say uvalat Sion at mincha, and that is instead of the Seder Kedusha, the Uvalat Sion that we typically do during the week. So why then don't we say it in the morning like we always do during the week? So on Shabbos, we have a lot of length with davening. Shachris Musaf, it's a very long davening in Yichua de Mincha. So therefore, they leave it until Mincha. In other words, the only reason why Uvalat Sion is done during Mincha is because the davening is already very long Shachris in the morning. That's the reason.
Oh, it's a tear for the tzibur?
Yeah, it's long enough. It's long enough, so we do it at mincha. Mincha is short, even with the uvalatzion and the ashrei. So we just leave it there. The Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berurah in their commentary. So not only do we say ashrei like we do during the week at mincha, but additionally we add in uvalatzion at mincha. Okay, why? Why do we do such a thing? The answer is, as we said over there.
What do you mean with the chol? The kaddish of the chol? What's going on?
Where? Which Kaddish?
No, he said it was either right. I said Shulchan Aruch, Mishna Berura, right? I was thinking.
Mishna Berura's over here.
Minchahi b'makom amiras seder. All right, over here, amiras b'seder. Kedusha the chol, meaning the kedusha the chol, meaning the kedusha of Tzion. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right. So they actually say explicitly it's tircha de tzibura. Literally, it's a burden to the congregation. If you would add uvalat Tzion, if you would have uvalat Tzion and Shachris and Musaf on Shabbos, it would make it longer. Shli yekabir al zakenim v'hamuberes v'aminokos. So you don't make it difficult for older people, pregnant people, or nursing people. If you're going to delay. If you're going to delay a lot in shul, and you're going to be fasting, so to say, until after Uvalat Sion.
Let's get real. I mean, Volunteer, how long does it take the average person
Exactly.
to say it?
Let's get real. You see the importance of 90 seconds. You see the importance of Tircha de Tzibur. These chazanim that they're dragging out. It's one thing if the congregation wants it, but if they don't,
How do you know if the congregation wants it?
You have to know. You have to know. Certain people, they like the longer minions with more singing. Certain people don't. So if you're in a place, for example, I'll say a classic example, most hashkama minyanim in shuls, they're not known to be the slow minyan, right? So if you're going to start going into a hashkama minyan, you're going to be doing a slow tune, or for example, over here, the last mincha marav minyan on Shabbos night in the shul over here, right? So now they're going to be davening around probably 8:10. They're probably going to start 8:05. Okay, so you're getting to Mariv. What time is Shkia now? 8:20 or something, right?
Yeah,
Okay, so you're starting basically Kabbalah Shabbos 8:20. So the guy's getting up to Lecha Doidi at 8:30, and he's going to pick the slowest tune in the book. People aren't interested. People don't want that. People don't want that at 8:30 at night when they're hungry, when everyone's waiting for them at home. They're not interested, right?
100%.
So you want to do a quicker tune. You know, speed it up a little. Similarly, Hashkama. You know, you don't start going in there and doing long tunes. No one's interested. And by the way, you could tell when no one's interested. How do you tell?
Nobody's singing.
No one's singing along with you. No one's singing along. No one is interested. Okay? Now, it should be pointed out that, um, you know, certain minyanim in general are known as what I like to call the library minyan. You hear no cold tefillah. All you hear is crickets in the background. You hear nothing, right? So those types of minyanim, usually, you know, you don't want to stretch those out. Those are the type of people who want what's called quick in and quick out. You know, David thinks that this is sit-down comedy over here. It's not. What I'm saying is true. And the Gedolei Rishonim talk about Tirchut Tzibur. It's a big thing. I remember Gramps, my Zaidi used to be very, he used to always say, Tirchut Tzibur. He used to be very, you know, but it's a real thing. You see, it's in the text of the davening was altered because of this. That they literally put it in mincha.
So
This is not a Musar sefer. This is halacha l'maisa.
So is it the Gabba who's responsible to feel out the olam to see if they want the davening slept out or not?
Yeah, and if the chazan, if a new chazan's coming and he doesn't know, the gabbai is going to tell him this is the protocol. We do this at this time and that at that time, and you know that's what it is. You know. So I remember
I,
around a month ago they asked me to daven Ma'ariv, Kabbalah Shabbos and Shabbos, and I said, you know, that's all up to it. I was exhausted. I was exhausted. I didn't want to do it. Well, a lot of times when you're tired, you can't make your voice very loud also, and it doesn't sound as good. It doesn't project, I guess that's the word I was looking for. It doesn't sound as good. It's number one, a lower volume. Number two, just the tone's raspy, right? So I said, you know, he said, don't worry, everyone just wants a quick thing anyway, right? That's the last minion, right? So you gotta know, all right? Um, Now,
but if you dive in a place where it's known to be slow, there's no problem.
right. So then it's a problem if you go fast. Let's just talk about the other way now. You see all too often, not all too often, but you see sometimes there's a minion that's known that the pace is a little bit slower, and a guy comes up there, and it's like, why are you rushing? You got you got X amount of people over here. You're the only one who is going 2 times faster than everyone else. Do yourself a favor and back down, let someone else be chazan. You yourself could daven, and if you want to rush, you could leave early. No one is stopping you, or you could just daven by yourself. Someone who's going up there when over 90% of the people davening there want it at a slower pace, and he's going faster,
It's wrong.
he should not be there. He shouldn't be there.
What
You
about
see
the
it
what?
sometimes, and it's major issues.
What about the let's say the father wants to be there and the children don't. The children like davening, they just don't want a very slow minion. Are they obligated to, I mean, this we're going kind of, I'm tangenting, but are they obligated to stay and maybe like is it better that for them to stay there and then potentially learn during davening, or daven somewhere else than, learn more somewhere else?
If they could dive in somewhere else where they're better with the pace and everything, then they could dive in there. If the father insists and they want to be involved with kibbutz avim, then they could stay there and learn at the permissible parts of
Or they
davening that are getting dragged out, such as Kabbalah Shabbos, etc.
put their heads down during davening or whatever.
Yeah, it should be pointed out that if you look in the halachas of kibbutz avim in your day at the end of Siman Reish Mem, it's explicit in Shulchan Aruch that if a child wants to daven at a location and his parents do not want the child to learn to daven at that location, he does not need to listen to the parents. He could daven wherever he wants. Yeah, that's right. Similarly, it's explicit with the yeshiva. If the parents don't want their child to go to a certain yeshiva, he does not need to listen to his parents. He could go to whatever yeshiva he wants. So it's all under the umbrella of kulchem chayavim b'kvoidi, right? Like the famous Gemara that when a parent says violate Shabbos, you don't listen because everyone's obligated to listen to Hashem. So yeah, I think the Hamudi Daniel it might be quoted over there by the Piskei Tshuva and says even if he's unsure if he's gonna have more success in the yeshiva, but he wants to go to the yeshiva, he can still go there, something like that. Look at the end of Reish Mem. The point being over here is that this is the opening Mishna Berura over here. Next Mishna Berura says, "Ani tefilasi hu al pi hamedrash." This is based on a medrash. She'amar David lifnei Hakadosh Baruch Hu. David said in front of Hashem, "Rabbeinu Shalom, Master of the world, Einu mazoi ke'oivdi gelulim." This nation, the Jewish nation, is not like the other nations of the world. Sheshoisin, u'meshtachrin, u'peichazin. They drink, they get intoxicated, and they do actions without thinking it through properly beforehand. V'anu lokein, we are not so. Afal pi shachalnu v'shasinu, even though that we ate and we drank, v'anis filasi, we still daven, we still pray. Mincha shal yointev ein armor. So, but a mincha yointev, you do not say it. Kevan de ein koyim b'Torah, since you don't read from the Torah, you don't say v'anis filasi. Shu eis ratzon al yedezeh, because it turns it into an auspicious time from this. Umiyu b'Shabbos nahagu la'amr. However, on Shabbos the custom is to say it. Af makom shein sefer Torah, even in a place where there's no Torah. Chein afilu b'yachid, even individually. So this is an interesting halacha which very few people know exists. If you are davening mincha by yourself on Shabbos, you would say v'anis filasi, even if you're totally by yourself.
Wait, did we go through all the reasons why when you don't say it?
Yeah, Yantif.
Erev Rosh Chodesh, right?
No,
No, it's not.
v'anis
It's not.
filasi. No, you
It's
always
not
do
the same.
v'anis filasi. We're not talking
Oh,
about sidkascha. Yeah,
oh, yeah.
yeah. In the footnote Dalit over here of the Ozvah the Mishnah, we were just going back briefly, and we have to cover 2 points from the Torah yesterday. One answering a question, and the other looking at something that we missed. Ke'ein zeh kasa b'seifra min hagosh b'shabbos b'shachris ein oimrim uvalut zion lefi shememarim latzis v'le'echel mivnei kavod Shabbos. Shabbos you don't say uvalut zion because we go quick to leave shul and to eat in honor of Shabbos. The Rishonim, they mention other reasons why we don't say Uvalat Zion in Shachris. This is not the monopoly reason. Like it says in the Mishnah Meseches Demai in the 5th parak, monopol. Monopoly. Not the monopoly reason.
It does say it
Yeah.
in a Mishnah.
Look in Demai, 5th parak. Ubrishonim Havu Bazet Tamim Nosafim. In So what happens when you have a dozen random chavrusas that are learning random things. You remember all these random things. Okay, the Rishonim, they bring other reasons. In the Likutei Hapardes from Rashi, Kosa B'Shem, Rav Yitzchak Semach Goin, Shetakanas Amiros Kedusha, Tesidra B'Yemoisachol Haisem Ebnei Gezeres Malchus Harasha. Shaloloimer Kedusha B'Tfila. Why do we say Uvalat Zion every single day during the week? There was a decree. They decreed that you're not allowed to say Kedusha. You're not allowed to say Kadosh, 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 Baruch, Kavod, etc. So what happened? So therefore, at the end of davening, the officials, the guards,
Wow.
they weren't sticking around. They said the Shemona Esrei is over. We know they're just wrapping it up. Let's get out of here. Let's go eat, drink, whatever they were gonna do. Right? So therefore, they put this text at the end of davening when they already left and when the coast was clear. Okay? So that's another reason. Reason number 2 as to the story with the Uvalat Zion. Well, this is another reason that so they say over here at the end, Ubemincha henhigu loymar king kedei shelo yishtachach mimosachol. So they just said, okay, mincha now on Shabbos. Don't forget about why we said Uval Etzion during the week. Just do it in mincha instead. Doesn't really explain why they didn't do it Shabbos, but something interesting about Uval Etzion that's explicit in the Rishonim, in the Likutei Pardes from Rashi. Okay. The Lavush similarly offers a similar explanation to this on this section right over here. He says that Uval Etzion was enacted to be said because of the decree, like we just mentioned. But he says that this Uval Etzion, these are requests that the Mashiach will come, that Mashiach will come and will be saved from the decrees. Okay? And we could say it in the actual tefillah. So you don't say chachris in the morning on Shabbos because you don't say techinus, supplications. But in order not to nullify the custom of saying it, they said mincha. In order to fulfill the enactment. Okay? That is another reason. Then you have also the Sefer Hamanig, which is during the week we say it in the morning because it talks about the Geula, the redemption, the final redemption, resurrection, when Mashiach will come. The main redemption, the Geula, will happen in the morning. It will be in the merit of Shabbos that will be redeemed. Mincha is a time of Eis Ratzon, an auspicious time, therefore we say specifically Shabbos Mincha. They say if you want other reasons, you could look at all these farm. Okay, Avujam, etc., all these different farms. So there's many reasons for saying Uval Etzion on Shabbos.
So what was Kedusha, according to this opinion, what was Kedusha the Sidra said before the Gezeres HaMalchus? Because we know the Gemara brings it down. I think we're on Sot at the end.
Correct, it does.
And it
So
says that it was
says
Mekayim because of
in davening, yes.
So where was that beforehand?
In just in davening. Seems like then they took it out of davening. They put it at the end after Shemona Esrei, and then weren't they able to put it back? And they put it back. And they just kept it. And he remembers that.
I think it was just somewhere in davening before the Ganshay Sagdola made a format.
It wasn't somewhere. It was in Shemona Esrei.
Kedusha the Sidra? Kedusha the Sidra, I think, is after the one that's by Uval Etzion.
I think it could be any kadosh. That's the main part. Right, we do it three places.
Right.
We do it also Birchas Kriya Shema, right? And in
Yes.
Musaf, then we do it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that Kedusha the Sidra is
I don't
after
think
the
so.
one.
I don't think so.
I'll have to take a look at the one. So.
Yeah, I don't know. What is Kedusha? Kadosh, Baruch Kavod. That's the main thing. Right? So, right. The point is that if someone wants to laser focus on this topic and they look at all these things, you can come out with like 10 reasons for doing it. And then, just before we, number one, run out of time, and number two, forget about it completely, I just want to pull up over here a few points about the Torah. Yesterday, it's about what does Sfardim do with Pirkei Avos?
Yeah.
So I said in a joking way, who cares? We're not Sephardi, right? Said something like that. Which is true. Technically don't need to know. It's always good to know all sides though. But it's explicit in the Torah. Right over here. Torah says that the custom is in Ashkenaz to say Pirkei Avos at Mincha. That's what Rav Amram did. And in Sfard, they say it in the morning. Say Chachris. Okay. So it's explicit in the Torah. I don't know how we missed that yesterday. It's a pretty basic blunder.
Wait, to learn Pirkei Avos right after davening?
Yeah, Shachris. That's what Spartan do. We do it after Mincha. The Bach says a few points on this simon. The main point that he says, that is also quoted by many, is towards the end of the simon. He has this long section over here, and he's trying to figure out in this whole question. I mean, you could look at it later. We won't go through the question, but over here, he's trying to figure out when did Moshe die, which would affect when we would be saying Sitkos Chosedek or not saying Good Shabbos Shalom Aleichem. It seems to be contradictions and contradictory statements from the rabbis in different midrashim. She says it's possible that Moshe actually died before Shabbos began. Right? But he was buried by Hashem, so to say, by Hashem himself, and that burial happened Shabbos Mincha. Between the death, ubein misa lekavura, between the death and the burial, I think there's just interesting history from the Bach perspective, if you ask me, Moshe. Hayamutul b'kanfei shchina. Between his death and burial, he was placed in the wings of the divine presence of Hashem. I don't really know what that means, but it sounds pretty spiritual. Like it says at the end of the first paragraph of Sota Yud Gimel Amid Beis. That requires more research exactly what that means, the wings of the divine presence.
It says that Dafka? I mean, because he's quoting the Gemara. Gemara talks
Yeah.
about their,
Yeah.
like nobody knows when Moshe was buried.
Right, that's what he's saying over here. Amar Rabbi Yehuda al Malay Mikre Kosav
That sounds
Yishar
pretty
Loimro
spiritual.
Heichon Moshe Meis Bechelko Shal Reuven, etc. If it wouldn't be a pasuk, we wouldn't be able to say it. Where was Moshe buried in Reuven's portion? Ubemincha b'Shabbos, that's a well-known idea. We don't know where he's buried. Ubemincha b'Shabbos she'az hu eis rotzon istalak ma'alma haizimna. The Zohar adds that at the time of Mincha and Shabbos, it's an auspicious time, and that's when Moshe left the world. At that time, Ba'al Kain matstikin hadin bois l'shol d'istalik ma'alma. And therefore, we do sit koskos sedek explains the Bach at that time when Moshe departed from the world, aka when he was buried, according to this understanding. That is the first understanding of the Bach. Then the Bach proceeds to quote a different rabbi, V'hachacham akolel harav Moreno harav Reb Yitzchok Darshan sheyichya meKrakow hechzik yishuv zeh shekin kosav b'sefer asara ma'amaros Perek Yud Gimel, Mechelik Beis, Maimer Tikun Din, the Be'erev Shabbos Haschila Misasai. Moshe started dying before Shabbos. The Gamar Siluko, but he totally died and left. Hay b'Shabbos b'Mincha was on Shabbos Mincha itself. B'Shaisa de'is Rotzin, at the time, at this auspicious time. Ishtakach Kimavur b'Seder Kimavur b'Zoyar. Seder Truma v'hoisef harav od noifich mishalo, and the rabbi adds his own little touch. To bevada berev Shabbos samach lerev haisa misaso. For sure, Moshe died before Shabbos. Zeu she'amru b'medrash. That's what the medrash says on the pasuk. Im loy bachisi l'kasha yoim sheniskasha hayoim kenegdoi she'amru hashemesh. Any sheikeya u'Moshe ba'olam. The son said, "I can't set if Moshe is in the world." V'ulafi shebiyoyim misaso helulo rabba havi. When he died, it was like a wedding. V'chol al yoinim yoitzin b'simcha. All of the angels in the upper celestial spheres, they came out with a lot of joy. They were very joyful. Lekras nishmaso, to greet Moshe's soul. The hayoim koina shleimus gadol, and this day acquires a great completeness. Nimso de b'shas techila shekia, comes out that in the beginning of the time of sunset, yatsa nishmaso, that's when his soul departed. V'hayamutal the kanfei shchina, and he was placed in the wings of the divine presence. Dalid Milan, for around 4 miles. In other words, like when you have a destination, you go on a trip. How far is the trip? So it was around 4 miles where Moshe was in the wings of the divine presence until he reached the burial location. Bilal Shabbos on Shabbos night. Because from the beginning of sunset until nighttime is around 4 miles. As it says in Pshachim Salidal, that's the whole cheshbon over there. Beautiful Amid there. The little technical and complicated. Vimkain, Baal Korchoch Shaloi Nikfar El B'Shabbos. So it must be that Moshe was buried on Shabbos itself. Vigilo Lano B'Sefer Zohar. It's revealed to us by the Sefer of the Zohar. Shaloi Nignaz Ad Shas Mincha B'Shabbos. Moshe wasn't literally hidden, meaning buried, until mincha time on Shabbos, b'shaisud de'is ratzon, there it is again, which is an auspicious time. Ishtachach kedei shetala nishmasu b'ahi rava de'ein haneshama oil lamala ad shaguf nikbar. And this was all in order that the soul would be able to ascend properly, because the soul could only ascend properly if the body is buried. That's the Zohar. Just think that this is something, this is in the Bach. It's going to get bits and pieces of it gets quoted, summaries of it. I just thought that this was a beautiful source that was worth 8 minutes of our time to go through, because some of the halachas in this simon are going to come from this. Number one, sid kascha. Number two, the saying Good Shabbos to someone at this time. And another point about this is that this is heavy on the Zohar. I mean, you got one Zohar over here that's quoted. This is in Parshas Yisro. You have another one in Parshas Emor, another Zohar that's getting quoted. You have this rabbi over here, this Darshan. This is just interesting in terms of the halacha and a little bit of Kabbalah kind of colliding. But for the most part, this I wouldn't necessarily call really Kabbalah. I think it's really primarily Nigla, just happens to be in the Zohar a little bit. But some of it's a little esoteric. But most of it is pretty understandable at our level, at least at my level. But yeah, just wanted to share that. Okay, that's the tour. The Mishna Berura continues. It says we remove the Sefer Torah. Ezra. This is one of the enactments of Ezra, as the Gemara in Baba Kama says. It's interesting in this Mishna Berura, they call Baba Kama, Pei Beis. If you look at the Shar Tzion, explaining where this Gemara is, he says it's a Gemara Megillah Chavav.
Which Gemara?
The Oz Vahadar adds this. Here's where the Gemara is. They put in parentheses.
Right.
That this is an enactment of Ezra to lean on Shabbos. The Chafetz Chaim himself in the Shar Tzion in Gimel said, right. It's just it's interesting how these sources are like that when the Shar Tzion is another source, but it is in both places. What does it say over there in that Gemara? It talks about that you don't go without Torah for 3 days. Right? That's a important Gemara. So let's see those. I'm just going to quote that. Okay, now the third one. Okay. It's an enactment from Ezra Sofer. He enacted this, Shetikin Kain Mishum Yoshvi Karanas. He did this for the Yoshvi Karanas, the people who are sitting in the corners. This is talking about the people who are working, and they don't have time to listening to laning on Monday and Thursday. So Ezra said, listen at Mincha and Shabbos. But the laning on Shabbos in the morning, and on Monday and Thursday, that's at the kind of Moshe. Okay, so I made a mistake. Leaning on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos morning is an enactment from Moshe. So I don't want to say this too loud because I don't want anyone to hear. But the least important laning is Shabbos mincha. Okay.
Makes sense. You already heard Lane that the whole
Right. I always like saying, first of
different
all,
parsha
the
though.
laning is significant because then you could technically start Shnai Mikra. I mean, it's a whole discussion about that. But general halacha is you're gonna, for example, go to an earlier mincha on Shabbos. So now you could start Shnai Mikra earlier.
Subjective or objective?
Both. In other words, once you daven, for sure you could technically start, right? According to most opinions. Shnai Mikra v'echad targum. We'll learn about it more in some Yesh Behei, but if you didn't go to mincha at all, you didn't hear leaning at all, and it's already sunset on Shabbos, then you could
I'm saying
start.
right, so but let's say like it's 6 o'clock and you down at 6:30 mincha and somebody will daven.
You can't.
You can't.
It has to be you.
So it's subjective.
Yes. Yeah.
You have to.
But on the other hand, if you didn't daven, that's why I said both. If you didn't daven, it's already after sunset. And
Yeah, you say, yeah,
probably. We'll have to see more about that in Reish Pei.
Okay.
I always, for years, have been saying, if I would, not that I try to, and I very rarely come late, but if you're gonna come late to 1 minyan on, probably coming late to mincha and Shabbos will probably be the best minyan to come late to out of the week. I look learning Hilchos Mincha right now, and we're obviously learning the importance and significance. We're dissecting every part, rigorously and in a very tedious way, which is the only way to learn properly. We're dissecting, we're going through it, we're learning the significance. But at the end of the day, you come late to Shachris, it's loaded Shachris. You got so much there. You're gonna be missing. You're not gonna be able to do it. You're gonna be behind the whole Shachris. It's gonna ruin your whole tefillah. You come late to Mariv, you miss a Baruch Hu. You go straight into the meat and potatoes of Mariv. Birchas Kriyash Mashma. You come late to mincha during the week. Tefillah b'tzibur, you're missing Shon Esrei with the congregation. So powerful. The Mishna Berura and Simon Sadi talks about how a rabbi had a multi-million-dollar potential profit deal that he gave up on in order to daven with the tzibur, with the minyan, and he was laughing after. He was happy the whole day for it. He gave up such an opportunity for something that's so much more important. Tefillah, coming closer to Hashem, etc. But mincha and Shabbos. Come late, what are you missing? You're missing Kedusha Sidra, which is important. You're missing one Kaddish, okay? And taking out the Torah is significant, everything, but the laning is the most halachically least important laning of the week, right?
The week, yeah.
Okay, so, but it's still nevertheless important, okay?
On time anyway.
Yeah, for sure to be there on time. In the footnote over here, they quote the Aruch. Who are these Yoshvi Karanis? The Aruch says the Yoshvi Karanos are people that don't come to learn. They just sit in the corners of the marketplace. They just schmooze all day. They talk verse to one another. That's what the Sha'ar Tzion quotes in the halachas of Kriyas HaTorah. Simon Kuf Lamaneh. Yeah, whatever. Exactly. Piskei Harid, the Meiri, they go into it more. Shabbos, after we eat and drink, people, they sit around, they don't have work to do, and they just waste time. They sit around. Ezra said, no, utilize this auspicious time for Torah HaKadoshah. And therefore, Ezra enacted to read from the Torah at Mincha, in order that people will gather together and listen to the Torah, learn some Torah, as opposed to just sitting around and schmoozing. There's a tweak in this, that the laning at Mincha and Shabbos is only a means to an end to get you to hear real Torah from a drasha, with practical ideas to work on a person's midos, to learn. So it's only a means to an end to get you there, so then you listen to a drasha. So,
Nowadays, we don't have these.
yeah, correct. We learned about that in Siman Reish Saudi Aleph a little bit. Okay.
Right.
So when the drasha should be in everything technically. Just want to say there's a Ben Ish Chai. V'lo samta chelki miyoshvi kor. Shesamta chelki miyoshvi beis hamikdash v'lo samta chelki miyoshvi koronis. And that Gemara in Brachos over there. So the Ben Ish Chai says one explanation in Yoshvi Koronis is a keren could mean a horn. The Torah sometimes could go in through one ear out the next. They say at least it's cleaning something out on the way. Another pshat is a keren can be in a corner. The guy opens the sefer, he opens to the first page. He says, "Oh, very nice." You see all the time they open up the first half of the Gemara, then no one continues to open to the end. Oh, very nice. They skip the whole middle. Yoshi Koronis is the Yoshi Koronis. But he says that. Just want to point out one more thing. On this previous page, on this previous Mishna Berura, they have an incredibly long footnote on Yud Aleph as to why this time of Mincha and Shabbos is an Eis Ratzon, is an auspicious time. So that is basically what's going on in the length of this footnote. There's some very long footnotes over here in the Oz V'Hadar, so I just wanted to point that out. Okay, Mitzvah Shem Tov, we'll continue.
Have a great day.
Yeah.